You're watching StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh, Revi, and joining us is Dr. T Suresh Babu. He has been an ex-ambassador of India to Armenia, to Georgia, to Mongolia, and was also India's charge d'affaires in Minsk, in Belarus. Thank you so much, Ambassador Babu, for giving us time.
Thank you, Amitabh.
Just wanted to get your sense of what really is happening, and so much has been happening in Belarus. 26 years of Alexander Lukashenko, from a kolkhoz, collective head to president. Then the sixth elections that came out, very disputed. The opposition saying that they were rigged, 80%. He says he won. The opposition leader, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, fleeing to Lithuania. Mass protests, over 7,000 people arrested, maybe even 2 killed, security forces being accused of a lot of violence. Then those two rallies, the pro and anti rallies that were held over the weekend on Sunday, and some suggesting that the opposition one was the biggest rally in Belarus in history. Where do you see President Alexander Lukashenko currently? Is he on his final footing? Does he have to compromise? Is the pressure so much that he will have to go?
Well, yes, you have rightly, mentioned about the ongoing disturbances or protests, in Minsk, the capital of Belarus, and also in some other small cities. Yes, elections took place a week, 10 days ago, 9th, I think.
9th of August.
Yeah, a week ago. And since then, since the declaration of results, people came out in masses, those who voted against Lukashenko. And the masses started swelling into larger numbers. And in the last 1 week, we all witnessed in the media, television channels, the number was, the size was swelling because running into thousands and thousands. Which is the first time, I think, in the history of Belarus, which is very, very close neighbor to Russia. Yeah. Of course, I will not go into details about the electoral process, what happened. Yes, elections did take place. According to the election commission, Lukashenko garnered 80% of polled votes, whereas his main opponent, rival Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, got about 10 point something %. Not to talk about other 3-4 candidates who ended up with 1 point something %. Yeah. Well, this is the first time it happened that in the last 5 times, 6 times that Lukashenko was elected, we did not witness such agitated masses as today we see. Yes, people are now on the streets, and they are into 75,000, 80,000. Some mention that 200,000 also. So the fact is that yes, large masses are going. Asking him to step down. The only slogan what we see from the opposition is only just just Ukhaji. That is just
Ukhaji и дверь закрой.
Yeah, no, it's just Ukhaji. So just step down. And beyond that, we don't see anything constructive counter program or counter plan of action other than the emotive demands. And also we don't see anything. At least I haven't seen anything, not a word against Russia in these things. Like no one. At least we don't see any group demands like Russia. I'm mentioning about Russia also. It's only they're talking about Lukashenko's exit, and they don't recognize the election the results. Following that, in the last 1 week, gradually we see the neighboring countries, the Baltics, immediate neighbors, the Poland, and also some circles in Ukraine. Perhaps it may not be the very official government level, but definitely semi-government officials. There are a lot of demands that the demands not to recognize the election of Lukashenko, and also because on the basis of so-called falsification of results. And as recent as yesterday, even this morning also, European Union, in fact, 27 foreign ministers of EU, I think unanimously, apparently unanimous, in fact, demanded the results, the elections to be again done again, or not to recognize the results.
Sure.
And now, in the
in this case, like you're pointing out, Russia is the most crucial. And reports saying that President Lukashenko and President Putin have spoken. The Russian president, Kremlin, the statement says that any assistance that is required. Just explain to us, Ambassador Suresh Babu, what the CSTO military alliance is between Russia, Belarus, and they were obviously former CIS countries as well. And does that give Russia the right, if President Lukashenko invites the military or the police in, can they actually move it?
Yes, because in the last, 4 or 5 days of massive agitations, Lukashenko finally called the Russian president, and apparently according to him, they had a long discussion on phone, and President Putin apparently assured him of so-called helping in bringing stability back in the country should the situation goes beyond out of control. So this assurance he has been repeating. In fact, he repeated more than once in various occasions last 48 hours, which means, he meant even the use of force, intervention by Russia, in accordance with the one of the articles within the Collective Security Treaty Organization, which is primarily an offshoot of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It is a security organization basically, and this one of the articles that he refers to is that if any of the country of the signatories in this organization is attacked by force, by any other third country, Russia or any other country has a right to intervene. So Lukashenko is perhaps referring to that, and in that context, he is talking about Putin's assurances.
So when you're talking about Russia itself, now this is a very different situation than 2014, the Maidan, Ukraine. Belarus and Russia have very closer relations, not so much like Ukraine. Do you see President Putin actually doing that? Because it could backfire against him as well.
You mentioned about Maidan, but I personally, I do not view, a Maidan kind of situation evolving at the moment in Belarus, because in Belarus, the sentiments of the Belarusians is, I think it is different than what is in Ukraine. Belarusians by nature, they are even closer to Russia and Russians and Russian language and Russians as a Slavian brother. So I don't see, because I had served there in Minsk and for 3 years, and I have seen Belarusians are fairly sympathetic, or even they like Russians, and so Russians vice versa. So I don't see a Maidan-like situation within the country, and because in Ukraine you have Western Ukraine, you have Eastern Ukraine, so there are a lot of differences between them. But here it's like a monolith kind of a group of 6 regions. So that, and whereas Putin, they don't look at Russia as of now for any savior kind of a role, but they are right now, they are silent. Even opponents who are the protesters are quiet on that. So they are just not talking about only one thing. They are only demanding Lukashenko to go. What will happen thereafter? What new demands will come? We are yet to see.
But President Putin is likely to wait out maybe a few days to see how the situation develops on the ground, right?
Exactly, Amitabh. Because Moscow has been very closely watching the situation. Moscow is not in hurry to take any drastic steps vis-a-vis Lukashenko or even opposition, but they want to see whether Lukashenko will be in the coming few days. Perhaps it may be few days, or maybe a week. They would like to see at least a week or few days whether Lukashenko would be able to handle the situation on his own and diffuse the protest by by giving and taking some kind of a thing, or whether the situation would go out of hand of Lukashenko, and then only perhaps Moscow may step in. Step in maybe for the time being, I think not with force. They'll try to bring the rival parties to the table to find some kind of a some deal. They may like to broker some deal between the two sides if the situation goes out of Lukashenko's hands.
Lukashenko is already seemingly today, even though he was booed in one of his core constituencies, the Minsk tractor factory there, but he's indicated that possibly he's willing to give away some of his powers. But another dynamic, you were mentioning the EU, UK, etc., who have already. Explain again to us, Ambassador Suresh Babu, the importance of Poland, how Poland has changed from the Soviet days. And Mike Pompeo himself visiting Minsk, I think it was in February, so there's a Western angle there as well. President Trump has announced the movement of troops from Germany to Poland. Explain that dynamic to us, Ambassador Babu.
Yeah, in fact, you're absolutely right. Pompeo was in Poland recently, and European Union, as well as the Western Europe, that is including US, they are interested. In fact, Lukashenko has been a bad boy, for them for the last 2 decades, for over 2 decades, and well, in between during these 20 plus years, some sanctions were imposed and then withdrawn and again reimposed, and some and European Union tried to get Lukashenko also towards their side. To pitch him against Russia by luring him with some, credits and loans and grants and etc. So he played Lukashenko also played, kind of a role, something from Russia and something from Europe. But now, after these elections, now I think Europe has made its mind very clear to get him out, because now the time has run out for them. Now recently, as you see, USA was planning to shift, or rather transfer a part of its forces, NATO forces, from German territory to Polish territory, which Poland in fact welcomed it, and Poland has offered $1 billion to finance the setting up of a military base, air base, to accommodate the NATO forces. So in that context, also we can see maybe NATO is very keen to play a role in this part of the CIS. So that to reach out to Russian borders, because in Ukraine, well, in Georgia they tried, in Ukraine also they tried, but they couldn't. So now Belarus is a very kind of a opportune time to take Belarus into their fold and to come and settle down in the Russian borders, straight away on the Russian borders. So perhaps that's why now the intense efforts are on to get the NATO closer to Russia.
Well, that's something that President Putin, at least, I don't think will allow in the very least. But again, explain to us the significance of Belarus. Many people wouldn't have heard about Belarus until what is happening even now. In terms of Russia and oil, now Belarus it depends completely on Russia for oil, but also Russian oil passes through Belarus to the west. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Because Belarus, traditionally during since Soviet era. Well, Europe is the major buyer of Russian oil and Russian gas. So in this case, during Soviet times, one huge oil refinery was built in Belarus in a place called Mosir refinery. So the Russian Siberian oil crude used to be brought to Mosir oil refinery and refined there, and then exported to Europe. And Belarus used to be given a part of that, like transit fees, or maybe a portion of that oil to be given to Belarus, but it's because it's only 9 million population. It's a small country, so their needs are minimum as compared to other bigger countries. So Russia used to give them a in terms of transit, they used to pay like a barter kind of thing, not money but oil. So Belarus is one of the major transit channels, for Russian export of oil and gas to Europe.
In terms of India-Belarus relations, Ambassador, throw some light on that. How much of ties do we have? What kind of ties do we have?
Oh yeah, in fact, with Belarus, we have even from since Soviet times. In fact, Belarus was is even now also. Yeah, well, it used to be called as the assembly workshop of Soviet industry. It was known like that because in Belarus, the part of the Soviet industrial giants were set up, like huge what do you call it, Belas, heavy duty trucks,
Yeah.
which are for coal industry and mining industry. So Belarus produces one of the best and heavy duty trucks,
Hmm.
dumpers,
Hmm.
and Belarus has a very good what do you call it scientific potential in terms of IT and also for what do you call it electronic industry. So
Right.
since Soviet days, we had a very close ties through Moscow with Minsk for getting so many electronic devices, electronic components, for our defense programs, and not to talk about Belarus also tractors. It's a tractors. The popular brand name is Belarus
Bill.
tractor,
Mm.
which are which we used to import large numbers to our Punjab, Haryana, in some of other states. Belarus tractors. So and also huge what do you call it cranes.
Mm.
So it's a big factory. They have Belarus. So and they used to assemble there and then re-export it to other countries from Soviet Union. So
Yeah.
since then we had a very good relations. And post Soviet Union, of course, we recognized Belarus. We were one of the first countries to recognize Belarus in '91, soon after the disintegration of USSR. And since then, our relations have multiplied and expanded significantly. We had a lot of exchange of visits. Mr.
Hmm.
Lukashenko visited India twice, and former President Shri Pranab Mukherjee visited Minsk as recent as 3-4 years ago. And very recently, I think 3 years ago, I believe, our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji, had a bilateral meeting with Mr. Lukashenko on sidelines of the SCO summit in Tashkent. And we were one of the, I think we brought Belarus into non-aligned movement, and we support each other on the UN forum,
Mm.
UN call it platform. So our relations are very close to. I know our vice presidents visited their countries and their
Mm.
prime ministers came. So it is like a very good relations that we have. And,
But
and
keeping
also
in,
finally, sorry, I must not to talk about our line of credits that we give to them.
yeah,
Our trade today, bilateral trade today is I think costing about $500 million, and out of which what's
yeah,
potassium
potash.
fertilizers, is one of the biggest, I mean, one of the important import item that we get it from Belarus.
Sure, sure. But in terms of what's happening internally, and especially because of India-Russia relations, again, you don't visualize New Delhi making any statements about what's happening there, especially since Russia supports India on internal matters, with Jammu and Kashmir, etc., and the UN and other international fora, right?
Yes, yeah. We well, so far on what's happening in today in Belarus, of course, I at least I haven't seen any
No.
statements by our ministry and our spokesman, MEA spokesman, at least in the media. Perhaps maybe our ministry is still watching, how developments are evolving because they are moving, they are changing every day. But otherwise, on other issues of our interest, Belarus, we get assurances from Mr. Lukashenko because see, Mr. Lukashenko is a one way, sometimes he becomes very emotional. Uh,
Yeah.
and he becomes so anti-American, anti-West sometimes at times, and sometimes he becomes unpredictable also when we try to engage him with some other talk. But sometimes on Kashmir, I personally haven't seen any specific
Mm.
their statement, but they do
Sure.
support us for our Security Council permanent membership.
Yeah.
They do support.
Yeah. No, I was referring to Russia and what Russia may do in Belarus and how India would respond. But that again, we'd be very cautious about how we respond, right?
Yeah, I think normally we do not comment on we do not like to comment on what Russia is doing within its own periphery. In the sense, within the CIS region.
Yeah.
So I think at least we do not interfere.
Sure. Ambassador T. Suresh Babu, thank you so much for giving us deep insight and perspective that you have from working for decades in that region and with leaders of that region. Thank you again for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Amitabh. Thank you very much. Yeah, in
And
fact,
for
I had a great privilege of being official interpreter for the Ministry of External Affairs, and I had a unique chance, privilege rather, to help our leaders in communicating with each other on various occasions, including with Mr. Lukashenko, also several times with our Indian prime ministers and presidents.
Right. It's been like that. I think from Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao's time through Dr. Manmohan Singh, then
Yes.
Prime Minister Vajpayee and Prime Minister Modi. Again, thanks,
Yes.
Ambassador Babu, for your time.
Thank you very much, Amitabh. Thank you.
And for our viewers, if you want to get all the latest news and analysis from an Indian perspective, just go onto our website, StratNews Global. You can also follow our social media handles on Twitter, on Facebook, and Instagram. And just click on that bell icon on YouTube if you want to get reminders for videos like this one that we put up. You're watching StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi.